Hi guys! It's been quite a while since I did a voiceover for one of these videos, but considering it was such a large project, I thought maybe I would talk about it. I don't know if I can talk for the entire length of this video because it's so long, but considering how sped up this video is going to be, I thought you guys might want something else to focus on. I had so much fun creating this Avatar series because these pieces were a gift to my friends who I used to live with whilst I was in Japan. Unfortunately, we all had to go our separate ways, so I thought it'd be nice to sort of commemorate our friendship in a drawing, or several. It wasn't the first time I had drawn us as Avatar characters. Throughout most of these drawings, you can see that I'm drawing from other pictures on the side. These were the original concept designs I made for each of our characters. It was the first time I had redrawn characters that I had designed before, so it was a nice sort of challenge for me to kind of keep the essence of those original drawings. It was also just great fun designing these. I drew from so many different places, obviously from the canon, but also from fan art. It's great to see how creative people can be, and creating mood boards and colour palettes was just fun for me. The piece that's on screen now is me represented as a waterbender. It's not the first time I've drawn myself as a waterbender, it's not the second time I've drawn myself as a waterbender. I remember I took part in an Avatar drawing challenge years ago where I first sort of came up with a design for myself as an Avatar character, but this is probably my favourite way I've designed that character. I really got into the little details of the little gems and hair designs and all that kind of thing. This is also only the second attempt, I think, I have of drawing water digitally. I wasn't overly sure of what I was doing or how I was going to get the right effect that I wanted, but it kind of worked out, and I must have liked what I did on my own picture, because throughout the video, for all the other waterbenders, you'll see me referencing how I drew the water for this one, and I keep switching backwards and forwards between the pictures, trying to figure out how I did it the first time. In fact, all of the elements that I drew in these pictures gave me some kinds of problems, but in the end I kind of enjoyed it, and you know, it's always a learning experience. Speaking of learning experiences, one of the things I wanted to do with this particular set of images was I wanted to have 8 pictures that stood by themselves, but at the same time could work as one big image. I've done something similar before when I've done D&D parties for my old D&D campaigns. And one thing I need to stop doing when I do these big group pictures is rendering every tiny little thing, because obviously it takes up too much space, but also it doesn't have to be that detailed in a big wide picture. Like, the way I colour hair, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the channel before, is ridiculously complicated, and I to this day have no idea how I started colouring hair digitally this way. It's just long and complicated and unnecessarily detailed. I'm fairly certain that when I used to use Copic markers back in the day, that I used to block shade, well, I suppose I blended them as well, but I used to block shade hair rather than this overly complicated thing that I do now. I mean, I guess it looks pretty, but my god does it take so much time. And whenever I design female characters, I tend to lean more towards more hair is better, which means the rendering time is ridiculously long. But still, I like the end results enough to not change how I do it. One of the things I wanted to get right in these sets of images was I wanted them not only to be a representation of my friends, but also for my friends to really like them as well. I mean, that's usually what you want to do when you're gifting things anyway, but say Anna, for instance, who I'm colouring here, She used to say to me all the time about how she wanted this dark blue to light blue ombre hair. So obviously when I decided I'm gonna draw one of my best friends, I'm gonna give her the hair that she always wanted. That, coupled with the fact that she adores water and she adores sharks, I thought, perfect, Waterbender, the colour palette works out, I know exactly how I'm going to design this one. One of the biggest influences though for Anna's design was a piece of fan art that dressed Katara up in a more Indian inspired outfit. As Anna's home country was South India, I thought using elements of that would help represent her even more. Hers was the design that probably had the most little details in it, but I adore this outfit, especially her boots. I don't know where the wave design came from in my head for those heels, but she hands down has the best design for shoes out of the entire group. Also, I don't know why, but her necklace in this particular drawing, for some reason the design of it just got away from me. I couldn't seem to get the waves in the necklace to look any which way that I wanted it to, and I don't remember it being that difficult for me the first time that I drew it. I wanted to keep all the little details that I designed from all the original concept art, and that included things like the little details in the gems and in the necklace. But on hindsight, I feel like I didn't need to put as much detail into all of these pictures as I said before. But considering in the end I made all of the pictures standalone pictures as well, so that each of my friends could have that picture along with the group pictures, it wasn't the worst decision I've ever made. So that being said, I did modify some stuff. So like with Nanami, who I'm colouring here, I decided not to put her hairpin in. I'm not too sure if that was because I didn't want to draw the pin from the back, because in the original concept art I had her facing the left, whereas in this picture I had her facing the right, and I didn't want to draw the back of the pin in her hair. I kept all the other design elements from her outfit though, and her outfit is another one that was heavily inspired by, well, not fan art, this was an actual outfit that was made, was tailored by someone to look like it was from the Northern Water Tribe. It just seemed to fit so perfectly with the type of things that I was trying to emulate with all of these drawings, that it's very heavily inspired by that piece of clothing. And like all of the stuff that I was inspired by, all of it's referenced on my Deviantart page. Because, you know, mood boards and references are incredible things, but I also believe in giving credit where credit is due, and I would not have come up with a lot of these designs without looking at the amazing fan art and things that were already out there. Nanami's picture was one of the few pictures in this where I couldn't decide if I liked the original concept art or the action pose, if you can call it that, more. And I think it comes down to the fact that I'm not too fond of how I drew Nanami's face in this. I mean, I draw for fun, I draw as a hobby, like, I'm not a professional or anything, but there's just something about how I drew her profile and her face where I feel like the proportions just aren't correct. She seems so much softer in the concept art. Different body positions and facial expressions are definitely things that I know that I need to work on when it comes to drawing. And it just seems like different angles, especially with clothing, I don't know if you can tell throughout most of these, that the flow of clothing in different positions rather than like a stagnant, static position has always been really difficult for me. In the end though, she really liked the pictures and really liked the gift, so I suppose that's the main thing to take away from this. I find that as we move on to Adam, it might behoove me to mention that in this group of people, by some strange coincidence, there are 2 Adams and there are 2 Annas in this group, so hopefully it doesn't get too confusing later on. I remember when I was asking around about which elements were people's favourites, or if they knew of Avatar and if they knew what type of bender they would be. I remember after I drew the concept art, Adam was surprised that I had included him. Admittedly, I don't really draw guys all that often, and trying to figure out guys' hair drove me insane at some point during the concept art, but I hope it was a nice surprise for him in the end. His outfit was heavily inspired by Korra's outfit. Again, my lack of knowledge on anatomy and how to draw people in proper poses came back to bite me, because I don't feel like his legs are properly positioned in this photograph. Also, because he was right in the centre, I had to give him, well, I thought I had to give him a somewhat small pose so he couldn't be too spread out. So I ended up on this pose where he's just sort of holding a globule of water in the centre of his chest, which I went backwards and forwards on over and over again because I felt like it was so boring for the longest time. In the end, I think it works with the overall picture, trying to fit 8 people into one thing, but when it stands by itself, I think it just looks a little bit stagnant. I'm not sure where I got the inspiration for those arm cuffs for him, but I have to say I do love them, and the necklace I believe was inspired by soccer. I think overall his design is a little bit less intricate than the girls' waterbender outfits, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I bulked him out a little bit when compared to the concept art, which I actually really prefer. I think he looks a bit better, a little bit broader, it's a bit more accurate to actual Adam. His design also gave me an opportunity to do a lot of fur colouring as well, which is something that I'm not particularly well versed in. I know that the other waterbenders have a bit of fur here and there, but I think Adam has the most fur on his outfit. It was a nice little challenge, and in the end I think I reverted back to how I render hair, but it was still fun. I messed up a bit on the clothes again though with this one, because I feel like there should be a back of some kind to his skirt, I guess you call it, but I didn't draw one for some reason. I don't think it's that noticeable in the final picture, especially in the group picture, but it's one of those things that really annoys me every time I come back to look at these. Because his design was a bit simpler though, he was probably one of the ones that were the quickest to draw, and considering this set of pictures had so many new things that I was trying out, I was still happy with how all of these pictures ended up. We're on to Adam number 2 now, our one and only firebender of the group. Once we all kind of got to know each other, this Adam ended up taking on the moniker Addy a lot of the time. And I'm ashamed to say, originally he didn't particularly like that name. There was a lot of very silly arguments back and forth over who was the original Adam and who was Adam number 1 and Adam number 2. But in the end, Addy just kind of stuck with this Adam. Addy's design was definitely one of my favourites, and not just because I had only been drawing blue palettes up until this point, but you know, my favourite colour is red, and I wanted something a bit suave, a bit cool for Addy's design. I wanted to include little details like the earring that he always wore. The earring that I've drawn in this and in the concept art doesn't actually represent his actual earrings that much, because I think the one that he actually wore had a cross on the end of it, but it was like a cuff that went onto like a dangly charm. Not being well versed in drawing short hair or colouring short hair, Addy's hair kind of gave me a bit of a problem at first, but I think out of the 3 guys' hairstyles I like Addy's the most. I think I just really like the flow of how I managed to draw it. Out of the 3, I think it was other Adam's hair that gave me the most problems, because I wanted to capture that sort of curliness in his hair, but I didn't really know how to draw that. I went backwards and forwards on Addy's pose as well for this one, because I kind of wanted all of these poses for this group picture to be somewhat fighting stances, which is something that I don't think I am very good at drawing. And as I mentioned with Nanami's picture, again fell into this thing where I didn't particularly like how I drew Addie's face in this. I go back at the end of the recording and change Addie's other eye because I felt like it was too cramped or too dark or something like that. But I was okay with how his body turned out. I think it looks fluid enough. And I think that the clothing could flow better, but overall I quite like it. This was the first time also that I had ever tried to digitally colour fire as well. So I was looking up tutorials and things on how to do that, and I'm very surprised with how well it came out. Out of all of the elements, I really like how I managed to colour the fire in this. It actually looks like it's glowing. Don't ask me if I remember how I coloured it. I'd have to look back at the recording and try and figure it out. But in the end, I love how that turned out. Nick was our only earthbender of the group. He was another one of those individuals where I wouldn't have to ask which element he would be. When I came up with the original concept art and showed that to the group, he didn't deny it at all. The main thing I wanted to capture with his picture, and I think I did it really well in the concept art, was I wanted to capture that grin of his. Have you ever met those people that it feels like their grin just fills up their entire face? That was Nick. And the way that I captured it in the concept art is a million times better than the way I captured it in the fighting pose. Still, he looks happy and ready to go, ready to fight, ready to earthbend, so all in all, turned out well. His design was also a bit simple, inspired heavily by the earthbenders you see in Avatar: The Last Airbender, but there were also hidden little details in there, like the pattern on the armbands and the little bit of gold that I put on the boots. I also managed to put his glasses in there because you can't take someone's glasses away, because otherwise how else would they see? I can't say I struggled too much with the placement of the glasses, or at least I don't remember struggling too much with the placement of the glasses, but again, glasses aren't usually something that I draw either, so this group of pictures was an excellent thing for me to practice all of these new techniques that I had never done before. I also ended up liking the colour palette for Nick's outfit more than I originally thought I would. I didn't particularly want to use any muted colours. I really like bright, bold colours, but in the end I really liked the addition of his trousers and his boots being a bit more of a muted green. It kind of gave the colour palette that earthiness that I wanted it to have. It also made it stand out against the more vibrant colours of some of the other outfits. What did surprise me though was how much I struggled with drawing the rocks that he was earthbending. That was something I never thought I would struggle with. I thought with all of the different elements I'm going to be putting into these pictures, rocks are going to be the easiest. I can colour rocks, right? But for some reason, every time I tried to colour these rocks, it just didn't work. Or I was making it too complicated, when really all I needed to do was colour some shapes. Either way, on to our airbenders, and the first of them being the beautiful Moe. She was our little sister of the group. When I asked her what her favourite element was, I can't say I was expecting her to say air, but looking back on it, it makes complete and total sense. She really does have that airy, jovial kind of quality about her that is very reminiscent of Aang. I originally couldn't decide whether or not I wanted to put the airbender tattoos on her and Anna, but I decided in the end, yeah, I imagine that they would master airbending. Besides, the blue popped quite nicely against all the warm colours of their outfits. What was difficult to decide on though was the positions for the two of them. I thought, given the composition of all the other people, they had to sort of be cramped, and if any of them were going to be cramped it would probably be the airbenders, because they could be up there just floating. But I didn't just want them to be carbon copies of the same pose but flipped. So I had to look up a lot of different positions for them, and I kind of like Moe's position. I think the way that I posed her looked okay in the end, but Anna's, on the other hand, I felt looked awkward and a bit too cramped, and I believe her body isn't anatomically correct. Like, her legs are too long. But again, I think it's one of those things that kind of gets hidden by the overall picture because there's so much going on in it. When I originally drew Moe's concept art, like it is on there, originally I had her eyes closed because she was always smiling and I wanted her to look really happy, which meant I didn't have to decide what colour to colour her eyes in. For all of the pictures, I gave everyone not their natural eye colours, but their eye colours corresponding to their elements. And when it came to the airbenders, really all we have to go on is Aang, really, in the original cartoon. So I gave Anna grey eyes as she's an airbender, but for Moe, because her eyes was closed, I didn't really give her a colour. But when I did it this time, I was like, oh, I'll give her like a purpley kind of grey, which ended up being really purple, but I actually really think I like it because it pops against the orange. What I wanted to do with both of the airbenders was really have their clothes, especially their sashes, flowing in the air because they're airbenders, and I can't really say I achieved that on either of them. Ideally, I would have preferred to have their clothing flowing in the wind, or at least following some kind of air current, but in the end it looks a bit stagnant. I didn't expect Anna's airbender to give me as many problems as it ended up giving me, and I think it was because of the cramped position that she was in, and I didn't really know how to position her body, which is why I think her legs ended up too long. I also really didn't like how her fringe ended up in this picture either. I think it's a little bit too far down. But again, all of this was some excellent learning experiences for me. Everyone really liked their pictures, which I don't know if it's just them being polite. I certainly hope not. And in the end, I was rather proud of all of these pictures. I don't know if I'll use these designs again, but maybe I will, and maybe I'll design some more Avatar stuff. In spite of everything, I really enjoyed this project, and I enjoyed being able to give something to my friends. And I hope you enjoyed the videos. Thank you guys so much for watching all of them if you have, and I hope to see you again. Bye!